and we're continuing with amazing guests. Today, it's an honor and privilege to have Dr. Jill with us. She shares extensive knowledge and information. She's one of the legends when it comes to sort of cybersecurity and talking with executives and understanding this business. But once again, I can't do it justice. So welcome, Dr. Jill. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You know what time it is. It's time, my friends. Buckle up. Here we go. It is time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. And we're continuing with amazing guests. Today, it's an honor and privilege to have Dr. Jill with us. She shares extensive knowledge and information. She's one of the legends when it comes to sort of cybersecurity and talking with executives and understanding this business. But once again, I can't do it justice. So welcome, Dr. Jill. And can you give a little background about yourself and your experience to the listeners?
Sure thing. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great when you got to come on my show, Humanized
Yes.
Automation, and now I get to return the favor. So it's a full
I love it. Yeah, it's great.
So, well, I would not call myself a CISO expert. I am absolutely a communication expert with an emphasis on how humans and technology intersect. And at that intersection, of course, comes a lot of not only issues, but also opportunities, especially for anybody in the cyber information, cybersecurity space, because you have kind of the two sides. One, like the combatant side, you're trying to fix the issues, you're trying to thwart the issues, you're trying to prevent the issues. But then you also have that dual challenge as a leader about having to communicate about what the risks actually are and getting people to change their behavior instead of groaning about this two-factor authentication. It's like, how do you get people to appreciate it and celebrate it? And that's where my expertise really comes into the equation.
Yeah, so let's jump there because I think a lot of times technical people were so focused on the technical solution and not really communicating the answers. So what would you advise like a security person? Let's say you have a business and they're still using passwords or they're only using 2FA for executives and we want to sell the execs on 2FA. How would you do that in a way that a executive that could care less about 2FA would understand and be able to get the message so they give you the budget you need?
It's really, what does it mean to them? What's in it for me? What's in it for them? What's in it to the people that you serve? And when it comes down to that, it's really what is going to impact this person's role, this person's ability to do their job, or this person's ability to bring value to the shareholders, to maintain their position in the company, to maintain their credibility. I mean, one event I was just at in the travel industry, hospitality industry, for example, putting on two-factor authentication, right? Having to type in a 4-digit code once you redid. And now we know that's not even, that's pretty normal for most things now.
Yeah.
Adding that alone reduced fraud by 85%. And when it comes to that, that's something you can measure. That's something that any executive, C-suite person, any leader in the company for that matter should be like, oh crap, like that's a lot of money, especially when you can equate that to the millions, if not billions of dollars that impacts. So making it relevant in their world, not only in yours, is really important.
Right. And let's just continue on that because it's not just executives. I find the craziest thing is most banks, most e-commerce, most sites that average users use on a regular basis have security built in. They have 2FA, but people it's turned off by default and users don't want to turn it on because it's too much of an inconvenience. How do you sort of convince or sell the average user that a little inconvenience now is worth a huge inconvenience later?
It's really looking at what it's enabling people to do. And I don't think a lot of people understand why it's there. So not answering directly, but giving an example that I think will hold some relevance is you have a lot of businesses, financial and otherwise, that are on a Microsoft enterprise structure, right? They have Microsoft Enterprise, they're using 365, they're using Copilot, they're using all of these things. But then you have employees that say, screw Copilot, ChatGPT is way better for me. So I'm going to go use ChatGPT. Well, what they don't understand in doing it is the risk that they're putting the organization at. Most people think, well, this is just more effective. Why wouldn't I use it? I'm not uploading personal or financial information. But even in doing so and going to outside systems, you are putting your organization at risk. And most people don't understand that. So a lot of the role of anyone working in IT and infrastructure and cybersecurity is also understanding, why are people going out to these other tools in the first place? And what solutions can we have our tech team and our infrastructure team provide that are going to encourage them to stay within the ecosystem and within the tech stack that we have secured and locked down?
I love that. Speak their language and go after what's important to them, not what's important to you. And then
Yeah.
sort of zooming out a little bit, I know when we talk a lot of tech people, and even myself today, and I've been doing this for a while, I talk with a lot of leaders and executives. I still prefer to work in a data center
Mhm.
around computers, because computers don't talk back to me. Computers speak my language, right? Computers do what I say, and I can talk techie to a computer and it understands. But then getting out of that data center and sitting in boardrooms, sitting with users, many of us feel very, very uncomfortable, because we actually, technical people prefer computers as it relate to humans. What is sort of general advice you give to technical people that have basically spent most of their life mastering math and science, but
Mhm.
not necessarily the soft communication skills?
You know, what's interesting is 4 years ago, the advice I gave, it's still going to be the same root core advice, but the manifestation of it and how you get to it is definitely different now. But it's really, how do you think of, what would you explain to a kindergartner? What would you explain to an entry level employee who doesn't know
Yeah.
anything about what you're doing, and try to dumb it down? Because one of the things that we get into, and this is all of us in all of our areas of expertise, it's the curse of knowledge. And there's actual theories on this. This is not just oh, well, that
Yeah.
sounds obvious. No, there's actual theories on this, which, when, for example, I go give keynote speeches, I consult, et cetera, and I go into an audience and I assume by now that everyone has tried ChatGPT. And I would be very, very, very wrong with that assumption. And yes, it's getting less and less every month, but you can't make those assumptions because of your knowledge base and your experience. So we have to find a way to find what I call the lowest common communication denominator. You're math and science people, you know what a common denominator is. We have to
I love it.
find the same thing among humans. So how can I explain it in a way that everyone in the room understands? And now you can just go to Copilot, Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT, whatever you want to use, and whatever, of course, secure in your system, to be able to ask, how would I explain this to a kindergartner, to a person that's in a financial role, to a person that's in a marketing role? And you can get some assistance in leveraging those ideas.
I love it. I love it. And once again, we can't have an episode without talking about AI
No.
and ChatGPT. So let's go there. You hear a lot of executives, and I won't bias you with my opinion. I'd love to hear yours, where executives are like 30% of the workforce are going to be replaced by AI, or your job's going to be taken by AI. What do you think of that logic and communication from executives?
Oh no, it froze on me.
Okay, you back?
Yeah, I've been here. That was weird. You got all blurry, and maybe I did too on your end. So,
Did you hear my question?
I heard part of it is talking about jobs being replaced by AI. So,
Yeah, yeah. So to my editorial team, just re-edit this question, because Jill froze for a second. But I'd love your opinion on this. I sort of have mine, but I want to get yours before I bias you. You hear a lot of these executives saying 30% of the workforce is going to be replaced by AI, or your job's going to be taken by AI. What do you sort of think of that advice and that communication style from executives?
I think number one, define workforce and define jobs. But here's the deal: I do not think actual people are going to be impacted. The
Yep.
job tasks are going to be impacted. Do I think 30% of the work you do on a daily basis is going to be taken over by AI? 100%. I have zero doubts about that. And you see that already in most industries. Now, does that mean we do not need people anymore? No, it doesn't mean, it means we don't need people for those roles. I don't need someone to sit there and type in enter 1,000 times a day like I used to. I can have a computer do that for me. So now I can leverage this person's brain and capabilities, skill sets, talents, creativities for something else to benefit the company. So if you are an employee in one of those roles where your workload may be getting replaced or augmented by AI, it's time for you to up level. And if you're a leader in industries where that's happening more rapidly than others, it's the onus is on you to provide the professional development, the training, the job skills enhancement that your team needs. Because if someone was hired into a role where a lot of those tasks no longer need to be done by a human, the onus is on you as a leader to find a place for talent within your company.
Right. And I agree with you. It's a tool. It's not a replacement. So do you recommend that everybody, no matter who they are, actually utilizes AI tools like ChatGPT on a daily basis for their jobs, or does it depend on the job? Or what's sort of your recommendation on embracing and using AI?
For me, it depends on the job. However, I believe that anyone in any type of leadership role or anyone who aspires to be in a leadership role needs to know enough to have effective conversations about what different forms of artificial intelligence can do to reduce workload capacity, task overload, etc. within organizations. So you as a leader, you've held out this long, you're entering the last 5 years of the career, like hell, you want to learn something new. I get it. I understand that. I talk to those people all the time. But if you don't know how to ask the right questions to drive the right conversations, then you're failing as a leader, because that is one of the many important jobs of a leader, is asking the right questions to have the better conversations that lead to positive change. If you're able to do that, then great. If you don't want to be hands-on, that's your choice. But if you don't have enough knowledge, and I'm not talking about, oh, I assume this because I'm smart. No, if you haven't played around enough and experienced enough or asked the right questions to learn enough to be able to make and drive decisions, then you are failing in your role.
I love that. I love the phrase, and I embrace the phrase in my company. Smart people know the right answer, and
Mm-hmm.
brilliant people ask the right question.
Yeah.
So it's so true about asking that. And Lotus, let's continue on that thread. I know a lot of times technical people, especially when it comes to cyber and others, when they sit in boardrooms or other meetings, they sort of think they're the smartest person in the room and love to just sort of speak. What's sort of the role you recommend to technical people or anyone in a room where they might be the smartest person on their matter, but not on other matters, or sort of the role of understanding and question asking?
This is great because my second company, we are an AI synthetic media startup. We've created the world's first like video automation platform using your digital likeness. And in this, the three partners, one kind of the visionary CEO, the initial co-founder, our programmer, and then me, who's focused on the customer and user experience side of things. We all have meetings and we're all smart in our own ways. However, we often butt up against the programming team where I'm like, no, yes, this technically works, but this is not how our customers are going to interact with it. You did this accurately. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but what I am saying, it's wrong for how our customers are thinking. And so we really have to find a way to bridge those gaps. And how I really stress about it is, all right, let's take a step back. At the end of the day, our goal is A, we serve B. How do we best achieve A by serving B? We all have to be on the same page about that. And that's when you have company mission, vision, values, purpose, team charges, etc., really, really highlighting like, yes, technically, programmatically, the code, all of that, beautiful, perfect, lovely. And it is not intuitive for a human to click here first instead of clicking over there first if they are not in your head. And so you have to find a way to access user behavior versus creator behavior. And those are two very different things.
Great. Let's continue down. So how do you do that? You're a techie person. You're doing cyber. You're disconnected from the customer. You haven't talked to a customer in years. You have no idea. How does sort of a technical person understand and get that customer experience and that customer perspective so they can implement solutions that are effective to them and not what's effective to themselves?
The obvious answer is ask someone who does interact with the customers. Ask the
I love
customers
it.
themselves if you have access to them. But even more so, it's you have your own data on how people are using, let's just say, your interface, right? So let's say you created an intranet to be able to access different types of learning and training activities that were driven by HR, training and development, whatever it may be. and you see people logging in, but you see them not staying a while. So from your view and the program view, you're thinking, well, this was a waste of money. People aren't really interested in training. Well, it may not be that they're not interested in training. It may be that this auto timeout or a firewall that you have in place is preventing the average user from getting to that content in an easy way. So they get frustrated with the system and go find training elsewhere. We don't know what's happening if a user drops off. We can assume what's happening if a user drops off, but we do not know until we ask that customer. And so it's all about correlating data between different units. If it's through HR, if it's your training and development, if it's through marketing, if it's external training where people are coming in, through revenue, whatever it may be, it's checking and kind of cross-pollinating that data with other areas, because data from only one source only tells one perspective.
And I love it. And you're hitting on all my key themes. My other key theme is let data drive decisions and not emotions. And you're right. If you have an application today, you have a website, you have anything that you're creating or developing, you have the data. You know how long they're viewing it, how long they're accessing it, and then you can go in and dig in on sort of what's happening, what's occurring. And I love that. If you have we do this with our team. If I have a 15-minute video and everyone's dropping off at 3.5 minutes, I go in and say, what did I say at 3 minutes that caused them to drop off? Look at what am I saying and what the messaging is to do that. So just sort of taking a different turn is, how would you recommend somebody, let's say, that isn't good at communication, getting better? Would you say books? Would you say courses? Like, what's the best way somebody can get better up to speed?
It depends on what they're trying to accomplish, right? Because communication is such a broad category. Are you trying to write more effectively? Are you trying to speak one-on-one more effectively, one-on thousands more effectively? It really depends, but there's so many resources out there to become better at it. But one of the best things that you can do, and it's hard, it's an ego killer, but if you genuinely care and you genuinely want to get better, it's ask other people. Ask other people who you interact with on a regular basis. Tell them what your intention is. Say, hey, Eric, I am really focusing on, in this next quarter, up-leveling my personal communication skills. And I know there's room to improve. Have you noticed anything? Or if you notice something, will you let me know where I have a tendency to communicate in a way that may not be the most effective to you? And this is not, again, effective overall, because people are hesitant to put mass labels on people unless they're jerks, and the jerks will always do that. But, people are hesitant. Well, Eric, I don't think you're communicating well because you don't do X, Y, Z. It's going to be hesitant. It's going to be something like, you know what? When you asked me the question on X, I really had a hard time understanding what you were trying to get at. So maybe giving me more context, or giving more context in your communication, would be helpful to me, right? Then it's to me, it's to my opinion. There's zero pressure on that. You're seeking direct feedback. Most often I find, and this is not only asking about communication, but asking about anything, we ask broad questions. How can I get better? That's a crap question, guys. Like, that's a crap question. You think it comes from a well-intentioned place, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's actually a crap question. You have to be much more specific and detailed about the feedback that you're looking for. It's the same thing as if a friend comes to you and says, oh, I had a horrible day, I need to talk. One of the things I always do is say, I am happy to listen. Tell me how you want me to listen. Am I listening so you can vent, or am I listening because you want help fixing something? Because I can do either, but you tell me what you want right now, because a lot of us, guilty as charged here, have the tendency to go right into fixer mode all the time. And that's not what people need. So we have to be specific. And if someone is not being specific with you, one of the skills you can pick up is continuing to dive deeper and asking more questions. Could you give me a little more context on that? I want to make sure I understand the whole picture of what we're trying to achieve.
I love it. And I say all problems are created by poor or lack of communication, and are fixed by proper communication. And then I always love doing the analogy is, there's a reason we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Maybe we're supposed to listen more than we talk, and love that of ask them. Because most of the time, technical people, we want to solve problems. Yeah. But very often the person you're talking to, especially if it's kids or spouse, they just want you to listen. They don't want you to solve anything, and just sort of knowing the importance of that. And then let's go back to sort of one thing that I do in my company. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but this idea of what if we did have proper labels? Like I go in with my team, and at everyone's desk, we sort of take skill test on how do you learn? Are you a visual learner? Are you a textual learner? And then what kind of mood are you in? Are you in a good mood, a bad mood, a cranky mood? So now when I talk to them, I immediately am reminded of how they learn, how they act, and what kind of mood they're in. Do you think that's sort of a good approach? Or is it better to sort of not wear it on your sleeve and let people discover it on the fly?
I think it's a double-edged sword. For some people, if you're asking them about an emotional state, you're going to put them on the defensive right away.
Mm-hmm.
I would be one of those people in most situations where I'm like, you have no business asking me my mood. What are you trying to get accomplished? And let's get to it. That would be me. And people would perceive that as, oh, you're in a bad mood. I'm like, no, I'm actually having a great day. I want to be effective and get down to business. I don't need the pleasantries. I don't need to do that. So I'd say it's even a step further is understanding the person. But when it comes to how you're trying to get across from a learning perspective, it's, are they visual? Are they auditory? Are they tactile? We need to understand the different learning types in order to help them better. But most of the time, people will tell you if you ask them, and whether it is categorizing in some way, so it's a heuristic shortcut in your own brain to be able to communicate with someone, or if it's, hey, I need you to be able to accomplish X, what is going to make it easiest for you to do that? And in some situations, they may say, you know what, if you're going to give me something right now, I need to listen to it because I have to drive or I have to walk. It can change by the day. So I find that when we put categories or generalizations on a person writ large without taking situational context into perspective, we are setting ourselves up for failure in doing so. And so asking that extra question, and even if that is, Eric, like, hey, you've told me before you're a visual learner, and I know you have a lot on your plate right now. I need you to do X. Is this still the right way to be able to get this information to you, or would you prefer something else? Well, one, you're showing them that you know them, which is a huge thing as a leader to someone that is on your team. And then number two, you're giving them something magical in that process, which is called agency. And when you give someone agency as a leader, that means you are empowering them to make a choice that is best for them in that situation. Just as if you give them agency to serve a customer in whatever way they see fit, maybe within guardrails, giving someone that agency gives them psychological and actual ownership over a process. And from a neuroscience standpoint, that endears them to us and also will result in better output and production.
And I think that's spot on. So let's go there a little deeper. You sort of said building agency. Can you give a little more of sort of what that looks like, and how, if they're not good at agency, do you get better and improving on that?
If you're a micromanager, you are definitely not good at giving agency to your
Okay.
team, like that. That's a big thing. And what we have to realize is when people come from different paths with different backgrounds, with different experiences, how they may get from A to B may be a more meandering path than you would take. However, it doesn't mean they're not getting to B. If someone is meeting a deadline, I tell my team all the time when I'm working with them, I'm like, all right, here's this job and task. Here is its value to me. You're going to get this money regardless. I do not care if it takes you 10 minutes or 10 hours. This is the money and this is my value for the task. And that encourages them to be innovative, to be creative, to find their own path to it. And then afterwards, when we have a debrief about whatever project it was on, I'd be like, hey, Caitlin, you did a great job producing X. I would really love to know more about your process and understand how they got from A to B. And then instead of saying, okay, well, why didn't you do it this way as a judgmental, right? Give them agency and say, that's really fascinating. I have never tried it that way before. Have you ever? And come from a place of genuine curiosity instead of condemnation, right? And when you can switch that mindset to a mindset of curiosity, you're going to naturally give people more agency in the process because you're not trying to create a clone of you and a clone of your processes. Now, for processes that have one and only one right way, those are the exceptions. But most of the things we do in business, we can get from A to B. It's called the process of equifinality for any systems thinking nerds out there like me. Equifinality means there are many different ends to the same goal. So encourage people to discover those ends for themselves. I've had many people on my team say, I got this done, but it took me a whole lot longer than I thought it would. So I'm a little frustrated about the compensation for it. And I'll say, great, well, walk me through your process. And they'll say, I was having such a hard time with X. That would have taken 50% of the time off my plate. And then I'll say, well, why didn't you ask? Right. And so it's a two-way thing because our employees, our team members have to learn to come with us to us with questions, but we have to not be overshadowing them. So give them agency to learn to fail on their own. A lot of business in our budgets, we have failure calculations in those because that is the way we get better.
And let's cover that, because I know that's hard for a lot of people, is going back to what you said, is I don't want anyone to fail. I don't want my employees to fail or executives, and I want to fix the problem. But what's the importance of sort of sometimes letting people fail as opposed to trying to just fix them and do it for them?
Yeah. Now, again, let's put a delineator on this here, which is not high stakes failure as it's going to cost someone a job or a life or anything like that, right? Let's put those situations to the side. But, 80-20 rule, right? 20% of situations may be that way. 80%, you're going to have a lot of leniency in how you accomplish things as long as there are parameters. So for me, it's give the guardrails, right? I tell people this in building AI agents all the time. Be very clear about your guardrails, but I want you to build your guardrails around what is best for the output, not around your fears that you have. And as leaders, we have to get over that as long as the goal is met at the end of the day, right? If you are a quarterback on a team and you're the team captain, right? Your goal is a team win. There are billions of ways that win can exist and that win can happen. Your job is to make sure at the end of that game, when that whistle blows in the fourth quarter, that your team won. Now, how do you get people on board to that? One, you distribute the workload. That's a huge thing that we often don't do, especially when we have super high performers. It's that same thing as if you were like me when you were a kid at all. You were the smart one in class, and I'm sure most of you were the same way. And when they did group projects, they put you with all the people who didn't do any work, and it was infuriating. So through elementary school, on our whole lives, we've learned that, well, we might as well just shut up and do it ourselves because it's going to take way longer to correct people. Now, in an isolated class project where you're not going to be paired with these people again, that may very well be true. In an organizational context where this person is an employee, a member of your team, and you're going to have them there for a while, you have to be willing to take that hit to make that investment of time or resources up front with them so that you have long-term yields and benefits. It's the same thing as if someone's setting up an AI agent to do a certain task. Yeah, you're going to put a considerable number of hours into building and training that agent. And that may not pay off until people have used that agent for about a month. But all of a sudden, when it starts paying off, it's exponential in the gains that you receive.
And I love that team example, but and let's sort of play that you're the quarterback. And what happens, so it's one thing when you're dealing with one person, but what if you have a team and everyone has different goals? So for example, like you look at a quarterback, the wide receivers want to run deep passes, the tight end wants to run short passes, the running back wants to run the ball. How do you deal with that where if you make one person happy, the other ones are going to be frustrated? How do you sort of get people on the same team playing together when they have conflicting objectives?
Well, it's looking at it as a whole season perspective, not an individual game. In a whole season, you're going to play some defenses that are really good at covering the pass. And in that case, you're going to want to run the ball more of those games because you're going to have more success. Other times it'll be the opposite. And really talking to people, talking to the members of your team and letting them know, like, hey, for this situation, for this project, for this game, in this analogy, it is going to be best if we run this route. Now, I realize that puts some of you off of your game that you would like to be playing. Next project, it's going to be a little different. And we need to look at it not as a zero-sum game and not a finite game, but an infinite game where we can, over time, level everything out. So it's not about a project by project or a game by game basis, making all fair and equal. It's what is the sequence of events and the combination of talent that we need to put in place to achieve a goal that we all agree on for this situation. Another situation is going to come where that combination of people looks and feels different. However, at any point in time, any player on the field or on your team can surprise you when the defense makes moves that you don't expect and they step up to shine, right? So you just have to make sure you have your team set up in a way where people, again, feel, back to the word agency, they feel the agency to jump in and contribute if and when they see an opportunity that's going to be for the benefit of the team.
Now, you mentioned zero-sum game. Can you sort of define what that is and how an effective leader does or does not use that in communication?
From a zero-sum game perspective, as it pertains to communication, so thank you for that context. It's not I win, you lose, or we both lose. It's every type of communication that you're doing within an organization, you ideally want a win-win. People all the time think, oh, well, we need to find a compromise. That's BS. I don't know what words I can say here, but I say some pretty strong words when people talk about compromise. Compromise is akin to failure in most cases in my world. And what I mean by that is not a give and take thing. It's if you compromise in a situation, both parties lose. Neither party is winning. You're both getting less than what is ideal for your state. And so again, it's finding what is better on one project or in one game versus another. And as a leader, recognizing that, okay, you know what? Jill really did not get a chance at all to shine. Her skill set did not come through in this project. The way I structured the team didn't allow that. So you know what? Next time or 2 times from now, we're going to make sure that her skill set is on high display. But it's really looking at that where it's not an all or nothing. It's not a binary. It's not a 1 or a 0. It's how can we incrementally make change, and how can we either from the use of AI lessen the percentage of our workload so our minds are free to do better cognitive tasks. From a communicative perspective, it's how can I find a way to not completely augment my communication style, but to blend it so it meets a person where they're at best. It's not, oh, I always have to change myself for them. No, it's, hey, this is your communication style, this is mine. So when I say X, here's what I actually mean. And I believe that when you say Y, this is what you actually mean. Am I correct here? And then move on.
Excellent. And as we sort of start to wrap up, sort of 2 things. One is sort of how can people find you? How can they follow you? How can they get more information about you? And then 2, if I'm listening to this going, Dr. Jill, you're spot on, and I need to improve communication, what would sort of be a rough 6-month plan you would give somebody to become more effective at communication?
All right, let me answer those in 1-2 order here. So number 1, my last name is a bear to spell. It's Schiefelbein. Yeah, most people get it wrong. So I am everywhere on social at Dynamic Jill. Makes it much easier.
Dynamic Jill, I love it. I love it.
So much easier. It actually, back when word clouds first came around and people were like, oh, this is neat, this is cute. I'm like, well, this is not cute, but it is statistically useful. And I discovered that name by looking at 100 reviews of workshops and speeches. And that was a top word that came out. And I'm like, all right, let's just use it. We'll go with that. Anyway, sorry, side note there.
Dynamic Jill, my friends, Dynamic Jill. That's how you find her. I love it.
That's easy. In terms of a 6-month plan, number 1, first, do a self-assessment. Be very aware with what you perceive your weaknesses of being. So I'm going to give you a 6-month plan that you do in isolation, because I know a lot of people listening, if we're our techie types, we want to not involve other people. So here's your 6-month plan in isolation until obviously you're communicating with people. So you're going to see these reactions. So make a list. What are kind of the top 5 things that you do not feel comfortable doing when it comes to communication, right? Hit on a pain point, because if you start making progress on a pain point, your motivation for continuing work in development is going to be much higher than if you're like, you know what, I need to stop using the word just in my communication. I agree with you there, but that's not really a pain point that you're going to have to work on. So find top 5 things that make you feel uncomfortable when it comes to communication. Then the next step is look up some resources. I'm biased. I have multiple books on the subject. The whole For Dummies brand, like that international brand, I literally wrote their last book on effective business communication for dummies. So, it came out about 9 months ago, 10 months ago. Go look at that, pick the chapter that relates most to you. I'm not going to tell you to read a whole book. Nobody does that these days unless it's for fun. So pick the chapter that relates to you and then learn something from it and make one thing make sense. But as you do that, then make that become a habit. Once you change that habit, you feel efficacy with it, you feel more comfortable with it, then go back and pick another. The way people fail in improving anything in their life, it's the same. People go for diets. It's like all or nothing. I'm going to have only the liquid diet and protein shakes every day. I'm like, no, I'm recalibrating after a long weekend. So my goal this week is just to make sure my breakfast is my standard protein shake every day this week. And if I do that, I consider that a win. Great. Habit back. Now let's add the crazy lunch, whatever it is. But only tackle one thing at a time. If you start to try to tackle all 5 things that make you uncomfortable at a time, my friends, you're going to stay uncomfortable. It's not going to be great. And you're not going to feel any gains from that perspective. So don't target too much too fast. By the end of those 6 months, you'll have some efficacy and you will have identified what has moved the needle for you personally and professionally. And that's when I suggest honing into one specific area and going and seeking help from a coach, from an executive, maybe a mentor in your organization, or hiring an outside professional to really tackle on that one area that you've really honed in on.
And Jill, one more time, what's the name of that book? Effective Communication for Dummies?
Yeah. Effective Business Communication for Dummies. Yeah.
There you go, my friends. Make sure you pick that up. And Dr. Jill is now, I'm going to communicate with you as Dynamic Jill. Thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was great to have a conversation with you again.
So you've been listening to Life of a CISO, and my friends, communication, whether you're a chief officer or you're a security engineer, the more effective at communication, the better you'll be. And join us next week on Life of a CISO.